What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another Borderlands 3 video. Today I'm just going to show you my Amara build that I used to complete the Maliwan takedown on solo on Mayhem 3. Now I will be doing a Mayhem 4 run and also show you the build for that because it's going to be a little bit different. But anyways, let's just get right into it. I'll show you the skills, the weapons, and then I'll show you some gameplay with just a little bit of pointers. I'm not going to go real into detail how everything works, just the main things that really make this run easy with this build. So starting off with the build, we're gonna put 5 points into Anima, max out Infusion, max out Tempest, Dread, Deep Well, Indiscriminate, Sustainment, Forceful Expression, 3 points into Personal Space, 5 points into Do Harm, 5 into Alacrity, 5 into Restless, 1 into Ascendant, and 3 into Wrath. Now for the action skill element, I kept that at shock, and I'll show you why there will be differences. I will explain a little bit about this because infusion is important because of the weapons that I have. But if you don't have weapons like that, you're going to want to have to cancel these 5 points here and put them into wildfire. But the only difference is that you're going to have to be reloading more because if you don't have infusion, you're going to have to take weapons of every element with you. For our action skill, we're going to use Ties That Bind. Crowd control is very important for this. Whenever there's enemies grouped up together, they are a force to be reckoned with. They don't miss, you just get bombarded. So you need this for crowd control. It's very important. And obviously you also want to take Stillness of Mind, and this is going to freeze all enemies nearby. All enemies that get affected by Ties That Bind are going to be held in place. So this is just a must for this. Make the run a lot easier. So now for the weapons, I take 2 Brainstormers, and a lot of people say you don't have to use a shock weapon if you're already having infusion, infusion with shock element here. So why are you taking a shock weapon when doesn't matter? The Brainstormer does not care what you do with your skills. This weapon is insane and it just burns through things. And I also happen to have an Anointment, which gives me 50% additional bonus incendiary damage on my next 2 magazines after my action skill use. So essentially what this is going to do, this raid is Maliwan, so they all have blue shields, at least most of them. So when I hold them in place with my Ties That Bind and I shoot one with my Brainstormer, it creates these lightning effects to nearby enemies and everyone gets shocked back and forth. And then we also have Indiscriminate, which is this perk right here, which creates ricochet chance. Whenever those ricochet bullets ricochet to other enemies, they can also create those lightning chains and in turn do a ton of damage. So it doesn't really matter that this is shock and it kind of screws it up with infusion because I have a shock and action skill element. It's still going to shred through mobs. Do not worry about that. So I take 2 just for the sake of not reloading. Or you could take an Omni Loader on your last slot. If you reload this little weapon, it reloads all your current weapons. Just pointing it out in case anybody wants to do that. I usually do that. It's just, I always find myself forgetting to use it. So that's why I don't use it anymore. But if you're a person who always thinks about this, you can go ahead and equip this as your last weapon. And get rid of one of the Brainstormers. So for the third weapon, I took a Cutsman and a Cutsman. So this one's corrosive. And this is the cool thing about it. The next 2 magazines will have 50% additional bonus incendiary damage. If you guys saw my video of me completing Maliwan takedown, you guys saw me just spamming this forever. This is the weapon that I used the most. I only used a Brainstormer when there was a lot of enemies grouped together, but this is what I used the most because it says that on action skill end, the next 2 magazines will have 50% additional bonus incendiary damage. So basically, this Cutsman, it's going to be doing corrosive damage, incendiary damage, and shock damage thanks to infusion. So it's going to be doing all 3 elemental damages that you need for this raid. Is absolutely insane. This thing carried me the whole way. It's crazy. And then sometimes I switch to this one because it's just incendiary damage. Incendiary damage by itself is always going to be better than incendiary damage created by infusion or this extra 50%. So in certain cases, when there was a guy with a lot of red health, it was better to use this instead of this Cutsman. So just putting it out there. And if you don't have this, you're going to have to take another Cutsman that does shock damage. Unless enemies are grouped together, use the Brainstormer. Because if it's a single enemy and you're trying to break a shield with the Brainstormer, it's probably going to take a little bit longer than if you just use a Cutsman or any other shot weapon, because shields is the easiest thing to break through, in my opinion. If you use shock against shields, you absolutely destroy them. Next up, you want to take a transformer. Now this is very important. I found myself in a lot of situations where my shield was getting regened out of nowhere because enemies just use shock damage sometimes, and it really helps out, to be honest. Like, this is still, in my opinion, a very, very important shield to have everywhere. Then for the class mod, I took a Phaserker, and this is very important. If you don't know what this is, basically you're going to increase your max rush stacks to +5, so that's 15 rush stacks. Your weapon damage will be increased by 3% based on the number of rush stacks that are currently active. So 15 times 3, you're going to be doing 45% more weapon damage every time you activate your action skill. For the grenade, as you can see, I use this Merv Hex, and to be honest, I wouldn't recommend it. You can use an It's Piss grenade, and that every time you damage an enemy with that grenade, they're going to take increased damage. So I suggest you use the It's Piss, not this Merv Hex. The only reason why I have it is you can see my terror anointment is actually incredible. So the more terror I have, the higher increased damage and fire rate I get. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a transformer with the anointment that says that after action skill use, you apply terror to yourself. So to combine it with this Merv Hex, but as of now, I don't have that. So don't take this grenade. Don't listen to me. Then I like to take an elemental projector Victory Rush. Now, this is very important because of one thing. Because every time you kill a badass, you trigger Victory Rush, which is going to increase your movement speed by 18% and damage as well for 60 seconds. It also has a 40% increase in magazine size. Now, this is very good because a lot of the time you're going to find yourself getting affected by shock damage or incendiary damage in this raid. So your elemental projector is actually going to come in handy, man. It's very important, especially because you're going in solo. If you're doing this build, is to go in solo. You're going to be affected by all kinds of elements. This is just going to help you overall. Now, very quickly, let's talk about the skills. So Anima and Tempest are going to increase your elemental damage. With Anima, the status effect deal increased damage over time and have increased duration. And with Tempest, your elemental damage is going to be increased by 30% and shock damage having an additional 20% increase. Infusion is going to convert a portion of damage dealt by Amara's weapons into your action skill element. So since we have shock as our action skill element, 40% of our weapons damage are going to be converted into shock damage. So if we're using the corrosive Cutsman that we talked about earlier, it's also going to be doing shock damage. So you don't have to switch to a shock weapon whenever you find an enemy with shields. You can just keep shooting that corrosive Cutsman. We're going to use Dread for extra gun damage on a grasped target, Deep Well for a bigger magazine size, Indiscriminate to add a ricochet chance, and that's just going to give us more damage because when bullets ricochet, you do extra damage to other enemies that you're not even looking at. Now, Sustainment is going to keep you alive. As you can see by the gameplay, you see my health just regenning all the time whenever I lose my shield. That's simply thanks to Sustainment. So in my opinion, Sustainment is a must to do this on solo. I could have put only 2 points here, but I wanted to reach the next perk. Now, with Forceful Expression, your guns are going to deal bonus elemental damage based on your action skill element. So if we have shock damage, our action skill element, whatever damage we do, it doesn't matter. Whatever damage we do with our weapons, 18% of that damage is going to be added as shock damage. So aside from infusion converting part of our damage to shock damage, we're going to be doing 18% extra shock damage based on how much damage we did overall. Now, Personal Space is just going to give us a lot more damage because with this build, most of the time you're up in their faces. you're going to be doing more damage the closer you are to a target. 2 harm is just going to give you more action skill damage, and it actually scales with ties that bind. With ties that bind, whenever you hold an enemy in place, it creates links, and those links are shared damage, and all that shared damage is considered action skill damage. So do harm is just going to increase that by a ton. Do harm is a must for ties that bind. Alacrity is just going to increase your reload speed. In this takedown, you don't want to be caught reloading too much because you're going to get punished. So this is just going to help you out with that. Restless is going to increase your action skill cooldown rate, so you're going to be getting your action skill as much as possible, and you'll find yourself spamming trying to get your action skill out when it's not ready. So this is a must. Otherwise, you're going to be spamming even longer and you're never going to have it, and you're just going to have a hard time. Ascendant is going to give your action skill augments increased effects. So whatever augment you use, in this case, we are using Stillness of Mind. So basically, targets affected by Stillness of Mind are going to stay 0.75 seconds longer in that state when you shoot them. Otherwise, they instantly get off of Stillness of Mind. And Wrath is just going to give us overall damage. That's just the way it is. But anyways, guys, that's the build. Hopefully, this helps you out. Like I said, I'll be doing a Mayhem 4, and it's going to be a completely different build. As you know, this build was focused on the red tree, so the build for Mayhem 4 is probably going to be focused a little bit more on the blue tree, because the blue tree is just max damage, and in Mayhem 4 enemies have so much health that I'm probably going to have to focus on the blue tree. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.